Good evening to everyone. Let us start off the session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. So today we are continuing our discussion of the Maha-Sakuludayi Sutta. We've spent a couple of days on this sutta now, but I think a couple of days well spent as we've discussed a lot of qualities of Dhamma throughout this specific sutta. It is a long sutta. It goes into most of the things actually we've discussed even with other suttas, but this sutta sort of brings together and sort of quantifies the teachings in a way that it sort of brings everything together and with regards to the practice specifically, right? With regards to the practice specifically. Okay. So we've gone through the indriyas, and in our last class we've gone through the four focuses of mindfulness, which is also called the four foundations of the four foundations of mindfulness, satipatthana. We've gone through the four strivings in terms of how we devote ourselves to developing what is good, getting rid of what is bad, and making sure that we are on a progressive path day by day, leading towards taking even one step, leading towards Nibbana each and every day. We've spoken about the importance of these practices, the importance of these contemplations on a daily basis, and how these practices helps us in terms of really pushing ourselves forward, or rather supporting our practice to progress in a way that we do sort of feel better about ourselves, feel better about the way that we are inclined to the practice on a daily basis. We've gone through the four parts of spiritual power, right? The four parts of spiritual power with regards to desire, effort, consciousness, and investigation, or mind or investigation. We've then gone through the indriyas, the five spiritual faculties. And we've also discussed, with regards to the five faculties, we've discussed how these faculties enable or help in a way that we find balance, how these indriyas support one another in a way that we are able to find balance in our meditation, in our meditative development, as well as how we sort of use these, the study or the doctrine of indriyas, and how it has been laid in a way that we find a path to sort of go through in our practice with regards to what supports the practice. Now, we've also then gone through the five spiritual powers, the bala, right? Now, when you do go through all of these subsects, one would imagine, is all of this necessary, right? If all of these necessary, or is all of these, how many things do we have to think about? Fair question, and I think a very, very fair thing to ask oneself with regards to when you do study, when you do continue along the path. And the answer to that is actually the knowledge of these different subsects, although we say these are different subsects in doctrinal. When it comes to the practice, these subsects, when we do know about them, when we do know what or how it contributes into our practice, we understand that these are in every way connected to one another. It supports one another. It is connected to other subsects. So when we do develop, for example, if we are developing the indriyas, we are also developing the striving, that we go through on a daily basis. But with regards to, we could start explaining about the strivings and go into the indriyas. We can talk about the indriyas and go towards, or the faculties and go into the striving, because these teachings are very much, it connects with one another. And one good quality, if you're on a progressive path, one good quality always enables one to flourish. So the good qualities keep on flourishing together with these faculties, together with the strivings, and all of this seems to sort of develop together. So although we have different subsets, when it comes down to the practice, it almost becomes simple and it almost becomes one, right? Especially if we start with the teaching regarding, for example, the Eightfold Noble Truths. As you develop um, the Eightfold Noble Path, as we go along the Eightfold Noble Path, the Indriyas, the um, Dhammadasa, or the four strivings, all of these things, the Four Noble Truths, the understanding of the Four Noble Truths, all of this goes on to, or takes a different shape as we understand the practice better. For example, if we would take the Eightfold Noble Path and dependent origination, right? As we progress along the Eightfold Noble Path, because with the development of understanding, with the development of our mindfulness practice, it opens up a door to a deeper, more finer attribute of understanding that we have not known before. So, with regards to teachings such as that, then the Eightfold Noble Path, the practice, as we can also fit in the doctrines such as dependent origination within the part regarding sati and samadhi, or mindfulness and concentration, it elucidates a deeper, more fine understanding of the realities that we know. For example, we talk about, in the beginning, we talk about Chitta, Chetasika, Rupa, Nibbana, um, consciousness, the mental factors or the mental concomitants, materiality, and Nibbana, or the attainment of enlightenment. But that is sort of now talked about in greater detail as we go into Abhidhamma, as we go into sutras such as this. We see that it is elucidated upon to a much greater detail. So don't confuse yourself. Know that all of these, know the definition of all of these different subsets. And as you practice and as you dwell deeper into these parts, you realize the different parts that these subsets applies to in your practice. So today, as we have now finished the four powers, right, the four powers, you find that even with the indriyas, the faculties enable, it's sort of like the limbs of one's body. If you want to walk, you need your limbs, you need your the parts of the body which enables you to walk, right, in a natural way. Now, likewise, now the balas then go into supporting the practice directly, in a way that this is where you gain your strength, the strength that enables you, the strength that enables one to go ahead with the practice. For example, if one through the practice feels that one should do, or one is enticed into doing something which is rooted in unwholesome, these are the strengths, or these are the powers which then supports one's practice, enabling one to then not give in to unwholesome, or continuing along the path, pushing oneself forward. That is why, on a daily basis, together with the practice, things such as faith, effort. Now we have faith and effort, our words, even mindfulness, concentration. Actually, all five of these words that are mentioned within the balas, or the five spiritual powers, are words that we have come across for the past couple of weeks. We've come across these words over and over and over again, because these are the factors that keep on pushing one forward. These are the factors that allow one to tap into deeper or heightened states of awareness and power. This forms the practice itself. This is the practice. That is why we keep on coming through these words. Now, even with regards to what we are going to go through today, which is very similar, actually, which is very similar in terms of what we've discussed through the Indriyas and Balas, the seven awakening factors, or the limbs of awakening, we call, or the not the limbs of awakening, the Bojjhangas, right? Boj, Bodh, Anga, Bodh, Anga, Bojjhanga. Bodh is enlightenment. Bodhisattva, one who seeks enlightenment. Boj, Anga are the factors of enlightenment. Now, the Bojjhangas are very similar. What is mentioned within the Bojjhangas is to say that these are the main factors that allows, that when developed, allows a person to then attain enlightenment. When the Bojjhangas reach a certain stage, um, when the Bojjhangas reach a certain stage, one would be able to now open up a door of heightened consciousness, where now the enlightenment factors, which are mostly mental factors, operates in a way that one's mind is completely converted from a mind which holds on to certain unwholesome states to a mind which operates now with a heightened sense of awareness, understanding, which allows one to operate completely in a different manner, completely in a different manner. The samadhi, or the concentration that we experience in this path with regards to when we do develop these factors of enlightenment, when it reaches a certain stage, let us say, like an experience that changed one's life completely, an experience that was so powerful. Just imagine of an experience that is so powerful, so blissful, so good, in such a beautiful way that one will never step back down from it, right? That is the only state of consciousness within the realms, all realms, that would enable a person to never go back, right? To never go back. Now, one would imagine, now I remember, I imagine, now how come when you attain to a sort of a stage of enlightenment, one cannot go back. Now, the jhanas, when you absorb, when you go into the jhanas, if the hindrances arise, you fall away from the jhana with the arising of the hindrances. How come this does not happen? Isn't this all experience? But this experience of enlightenment, when developed, again, it is such a such a beautiful, wholesome, tasteful experience that one is absolutely converted. To express on this power of conversion, the Buddha, with regards to in the Abhidhamma, we speak about a status of change from a perspective of how the mind cognizes upon elements. We've spoken about this. This is where, for example, we've used the words in the study of Abhidhamma, we've gone through the words Manodvara Avarjana, which deals with which deals with consciousnesses, which deals with the Yonisamanasikara, Ayonisamanasikara. Now, then we speak about something called Votapana, right? Which is about specifically about the Yonisamanasikara, the right understanding or right contemplation or right cognition of things, and then the Ayoniso Manasikara, which is the wrong cognition of things, Yoniso and Ayoniso Manasikara, which happens in Votapana. And at a stage of enlightenment, this Votapana, the Buddha uses an entirely different word to explain this process, a shift in mind, where he uses the word gotra bu. Gotra means caste or clan, and bu is a jump or development from an ordinary caste or clan to a higher caste or clan. This caste or clan refers to the caste or clan of an enlightened being, to say that the mind will now operate in a distinctively clear, different manner to what you are going through. And it is to support that experience that we, on a daily basis, again, develop faith, effort, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, right? So on a daily basis, how now sometimes, when we say on a daily basis, when you're trying to do this, one might imagine this is very exhausting, right? This is very exhausting. Yes, I agree. This can be very exhausting to a beginner, right? When you're trying to get into a practice, when you're trying to adjust yourself, alter your lifestyle, all of this, yes, it can be very exhausting in the beginning. But as you go forth, as you go forward in your practice, these practices slowly start becoming your natural way of operation, your habit almost. Yeah, your habit almost. But we don't use the word habit with regards to these mental factors because of our sansaric pull towards unwholesome, right? Up until we do attain to a status of enlightenment, the sansaric pull that we have towards the unwholesome is there distinctively up until we attain arahanthood or supreme enlightenment. But as we go through the path, this pull reduces at the time when we go through the jhanas, it weakens, this pull weakens. But it is not convincing enough. It is not convincing enough because the potential for that pull to now strengthen itself again is still benevolently present. As we go on the path, and then when we reach the rupa jhanas, the arupa jhanas, and then go on to higher levels of samadhi, this weakens the hindrances, the pull of the catch of the hindrances, the prapanchas, which we call, in a way that this pull weakens and our bonds to samsara are weakened. Now, that is why, on a daily basis, with Dhammic contemplation, we must go forward. With Dhammic contemplation, I have mentioned, with regards to the reading of the suttas, if you are able to read one sutta, very good. But if you're able to read two sutras a day, I promise you, this will entirely change the way that you think and behave on a daily basis. It actually will. And I've mentioned this before because what we intend on doing with such effort is to change the pattern of thinking. Monks, you might know, when a novice or when a monk is ordained, a monk is required to live in or live under a teacher, under the guidance of a teacher for the first 5 years. For the first 5 years. So this, for the first 5 years, this is because during these 5 years, this monk goes through a conversion of thinking. Now, this might sound a bit scary, like what these cults do. They think they change your way of thinking. But here, what essentially is done is we adapt to a different pattern of thinking. We adapt to different bases of operation in ways. Now, as lay people, we might think about profit and loss, whilst as monks, then we need to change that mentality. We need to change that mentality in a way that we find ourselves drawn towards or find ourselves working towards enlightenment on a daily basis using certain other operations to satisfy ourselves, right? To satisfy ourselves. And this is again because of a similar operation here that is preached by the Buddha for lay people and monks alike, to anyone who wants to reach a state of enlightenment, where these factors are developed within oneself on a daily basis. And bringing that together are the four strivings, if you understand what I mean now, right? Bringing that together, making sure on a daily pattern, on a daily basis, you are working towards it, The way that you contemplate, have I done so? Have I moved forward? Is then what we refer to as the Dhamma Dasa, or we also call it the mirror of Dhamma. Here we refer to it as the four strivings, the four right strivings, and that is where one contemplates, have I done good? Have I got rid of what is bad? Has bad which was not in me developed today, or has good which was not in me yesterday developed today? So it is a progressive path. It is a progressive path. Even if one does make a mistake, we do not grovel over it. Rather, we understand it. We take measures where we could avoid it within our life, or we focus on the things that are right and we move forward. Because according to the Buddha, nothing else is important other than nibbana, right? Within this practice, nothing else is more important other than the achievement and attainment of nibbana. And because this wholesome umbrella is such a wholesome good practice, that it drips down to a wholesome lifestyle, a wholesome pattern of living as well, right? So you can rest assured that the more that you actually do practice the Dhamma in the right way, with the right amount of effort, with the right attitude and mentality supporting your practice on a daily basis, your families will flourish. The environments that you live in do flourish. Even the flowers in your garden will flourish, right? In a way that because your energy, because everything about you is now balanced, or you're working towards that kind of a balance in your life, right? So you can rest assured, do not think that you will be sort of drawn away from your family. If you are thinking such a thing, there is something wrong in your practice and you need to correct it, right? There's something wrong in your practice and you need to correct it. If you're feeling as if you're being drawn down, or you're being pulled down, or your life is becoming more stressful, again, there's something wrong in your practice. It is not supposed to be doing that. There is something wrong in your practice. So always check on yourselves. Always check on yourselves. Make sure that you are dwelling on this path in a way that is organically healthy to you, right? Organically healthy to you. Now, mentioning that, let us move forward. Now, today we are going to discuss or go through the 7 factors of awakening or enlightenment, right? Furthermore, Uday, page number 214. Furthermore, Uday, the path has been shown to my disciples, practicing which they would cultivate the 7 awakening factors. Here, Uday, a monk, cultivates the awakening factor, that is mindfulness, that is dependent on solitude, dependent on fading away of lust or dispassion, dependent on cessation of suffering, ripening in the letting go of defilements, ripening in the letting go of defilements. Now, we have sort of touched on this. Now, remember, the only thing that is new in this category that we have not discussed before is Dhamma Vichaya, right? Is Dhamma Vichaya, and the rest we have actually gone through it more than once, right? We have actually gone through it more than once. It is the same factors, but with a different name, which we say the Bojjhangas, right? So let us not dwell on it again, but we will discuss Dhamma Vichaya. But there are a couple of important things to note here. Now, cultivates the awakening factor, that is mindfulness. Awakening factor. Mindfulness opens a doorway. For example, now with our meditative practices, we might have noticed that as you develop your meditation, if done in the right way, that you keep on discovering new things about your mind. You keep on discovering, if it is chittanupassana, if contemplation of consciousness, you keep on discovering new things about consciousness. consciousness, about your consciousness, about your mind, about how it operates, the roots and links of your consciousness. Then we, if it is Vedananupasana, we go deeper and deeper into understanding finer states of these sensations. Then we go deep into understanding the roots and links of these sensations. Then we go on to being able to break down these sensations into deeper, finer atomic levels, right? And that is also something that we experience. Now, that is all done by mindfulness, but not mindfulness alone, because when this factor of mindfulness appears to one in one's mind through one's practice, through right mindfulness, may I add, right? Not not miccha sati, but samma sati, right? Right, not wrong mindfulness, but right mindfulness. Here, right mindfulness meaning, what I mean by wrong mindfulness, let me clear that up, is your mindfulness needs to be directed. We've talked about this again, needs to be directed. Where is this direction heading? This direction is heading towards a goal, right? Towards a goal. What is the goal? Enlightenment. The goal is enlightenment. It is when this mindfulness is directed, that it becomes right or samma sati, or then if we discuss about the other also, samma samadhi, right? When this mindfulness is rightly directed towards the ultimate goal of nibbana. Now, when I say directed, or when I say focused upon, I remember all the practice of the paramis, the perfection, where it is within the Buddhist doctrine, we believe that in working with the paramis, or trying to develop the paramis, it is important that as we do develop the paramis, something that we do with the cultivation or with the practice of parami is that we determine the paramis to be, something which leads, supports to nibbana, right? Again, there you see a Dhammanusati practice, right? You see a Dhammanusati practice. Now, these paramis, now as monks, what we were taught, what our masters taught us, what our masters taught us is, now, for example, with regards to the paramis, now let us say, with regards to the effort that you make, right? With regards to the effort that you make, we have to, as monks, we have to be creative in the way that we also develop the paramis, because sometimes, now, for example, if you take dana, right, the dana parami, now as lay people, you are, as lay people, as Buddhist lay people, some of the Buddhist lay people as well, what they do is you engage yourself in dana, right? Donation, giving, offering of alms to the monks, or doing other sorts of charity, where you make food for someone, whatever it is. Now you have more opportunities in that way to do dana, and monks need to be a little bit more creative to be able to develop the dana parami. So I've talked about the Saraniya Vata with you, where the monks, they go on alms, right? Where they go on alms, and they put their, usually today how it is practiced is, now when you take certain monasteries, it's not practiced everywhere, but monks are free to practice it as they like. With the Saraniya Vata, which is usually, actually, it's usually practiced in Sri Lanka, in the Sri Lankan forest tradition. What you do is you go on your alms, or you collect your alms, and then before you consume your food, you serve a bit of your food to the other monks' bowls. So the monks would be standing up. It would be a whole sort of bonding session in a way, and we would spoon out spoons of food into the other monks' bowls, and as we pass them, they will also spoon out spoons of food into ours. So it would be one spoon per bowl, right? And they would spoon one into our bowl. So that is the way it is currently practiced. But the correct way how to practice, it is not entirely correct, the way that it is practiced. The correct way to practice it, you go on your arms round, and you put the bowl down. So usually in a refectory or a place where the monks consume their meal, if it is a hall, a dana sala we call it, or a hall where the monks consume the food, uh, the refectory of the monks, there would be a table in the middle where you have your other occupances, and maybe the Buddha Puja would be laid there, where you also serve the Buddha Puja, the offering that we make towards the Buddha, part of the food that we've got from the alms. You lay it on this table, right? You keep it on this table and you offer it to the Sangha, right? So basically, you don't sort of do it in a way that you say, imasmin danang sangasadem. You don't do all of that. You just, within your mind, you think, I'm offering this to the Sangha, and you lay it on the table, right? So when a bowl is laid on the table, what would be done? What would be done is the monks would know what it is about. So they will serve whatever they would like or whatever they need. And the remainder, so there might be, so obviously monks are very considerate, monks have to be considerate. It's a part of our practice. If monks are not considerate, who else will be considerate? Monks have to be considerate. So we don't sort of go all in and take all of their food. Although that would be quite funny to do. But 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 we would be very considerate and we would not take all. But there would also be instances where the food would finish, right? Especially in the ancient times, because there is not much of food, right? There is not much of food now, especially in countries like Burma, where in cities like Mandalay or Sagaing, where there are more monks than the lay people, where monks have to take 4 a.m. buses out of the city to go into the suburban sort of villages to go on their alms. And these arms rounds would be very, very long, 5-6 hours sometimes, because it's very difficult to find food sometimes. And I remember when I went for my first alms round, I got rice, I got banana, and I got pork curry, right? So I didn't eat the pork curry, so I ate and I felt embarrassed. So there was food in the dining hall, right? But everyone knew that I was going on my arms round, right? So I was embarrassed to go to the refectory and have food. So I ate my banana and rice. It is only then that I learned that you cannot go at 6 o'clock in the morning for alms in Burma. People are very lazy and they get up late. So you must go at 9 o'clock sharp, right? When you leave at 9 o'clock, by 9:30, you're where the houses are, and then you get your alms, because people get up late. Burma is a very slow country, right? People get up late. So I had to sort of eat banana and rice once, but that it was fine. It's another story to tell. But so likewise, this is Sara Niyamata, and then our masters teach us also with regards to consideration. It is also mentioned within the monastic code, if a certain devotee is very pious, right? A certain devotee is very pious. Now, this is referring to specifically enlightened beings. Now, beings such as stream enterers, right? Stream enterers plus, right? Anyone above stream enterer. So these devotees, they will give whatever. They will give absolutely whatever they have. They will not think about themselves. They have so much of piety and faith towards the Dhamma, the teachings, that they will give whatever they have to the monks or the Sangha, because of the gratitude that they have for the practice, teachings, and all of that, right? So it is mentioned that when we go to a house of a person who is enlightened, and if the person is of little means, we are not allowed to take more than 2 spoons of rice, right? We are not allowed to take more than 2 spoons of rice. And also, on our way back or on the same road, if we see another monk, we must tell that monk not to go to that house, right? We must signal to that monk not to go to that house. Why? Because probably they would end up with having no food, because there were so much of monks. So that degree of care, that touches me, and being a person who has come into Buddhism from another faith, another religion, that amount of care and compassion that the Buddha has had for the devotees or for people, for especially not to exploit, not to at all exploit the kindness of people is very touching, which sometimes we rarely see, right? But it's very touching, and it is a part of our practice. It is a part of the monastic code as well. We are not allowed to take more than two teaspoons of rice. And some actually something that devotees around specific monasteries do, because these devotees, they would be coming into the monastery, they would know about a lot of these practices. So what they would do is they would know that we would not take much. So what they do is they bring bowls of food out, and they don't serve with a spoon. What they do is they so if you would imagine a box of food, or as you would imagine, as you would know how a bowl of food is in a village, they would sort of dump the whole thing into the bowl so that we would not say no after after 2 spoons of food, because most of these houses would be poor households. They are not wealthy households. So there is that amount of consideration. With regards to the rest of the paramis, now, for example, dana parami, one thing that we are asked to do is, for example, actually we are asked to do this as a practice. Now, a monastery is funded by devotees, right? All of the money that funds these large monasteries comes from the money of devotees. The monks would not be earning all of this practice, this allowance, everything that we have, the medicine, everything comes from the money of devotees. So with regards to, for example, now let's say dana and virya part, all right? So when we leave the kuti, or when we do not need a light on, what they would say is switch off the light. The effort that you take to switch off the light is your virya parami, so determine that. And you switching off the light when you absolutely don't need it is your dana parami, right? Is your dana parami, in a way that you allow for that expense to be taken off, or that time of expense to be taken off the monastery bill. So in that way, monks get creative. And I think for you as well, because now, for example, in times of isolation, if you're isolating, if you're home alone or with your family, these are ways. So when you cook food for your if you're the person who cooks at home, don't do it just because you have to cook. Do it as a dana parami. The effort that you take, the effort that you make to sort of cook and then put food on the table, do it in terms of a virya parami, dana parami, these things. Now, I know that some people, you're used to sort of eating out of the pots that you cook. I would highly sort of, say, do not do that. Do not eat out of the pots that you cook. You put food on the table with dishes, and that is your virya parami, that is your dana parami. And I think now, personally for my practice, I would say I have been very, very, very fortunate in a way that monks who are teachers have actually come behind me to teach me. And this is a phenomena that surprises me even now. When I was younger, I've told you before that a monk took the effort to write A4 pages on A4 pages of Abhidhamma by mail, right? He used to write it and post it to me, and I would write him back with questions, and then he would reply those questions together with another 5-10 pages of Abhidhamma, right? In that way, when I was in the monastery, these monks would come behind me to teach me for a phenomena I did not understand why, right? And I've had so many monks like that, sort of supporting. And I think it's because probably in a past birth or something like that, I've done things like this where I taught people and really pushed people to practice. So for me, I've I think because obviously when you're young, you're also a bit lazy, and you really don't really sometimes you want to learn the Dhamma and all of these things, but you don't want to learn it. You want to learn it at a slow pace. But because of all of these people who are around me, I was able to learn quite fast, because they were pushing me and they had more interest in me learning the Dhamma than I actually had to learn the Dhamma, to be very honest with you, right? And that is something that you need to take to heart with, for example, with putting your food on the table, not eating out of your pots and pans, really making an effort on the daily. You're not just doing it for the people at home. Of course, you're doing it at the people at home, but also you're doing it for your sansaric journey, for your sansaric life. So gain inspiration from those things to sort of make an effort each and every single day. And that is how we sort of develop these factors of enlightenment as well. On a daily basis, you make an effort with regards to the paramis, and the paramis you practice in them falls under this determination, which in turn becomes what it becomes. It becomes a anusati, a determination, a contemplation on a daily basis, right? A contemplation on a daily basis, the development of Dhammanusati. And with that, what happens is you're always on the path. There's always something regarding the Dhamma going on in your mind, right? Going on in your mind. And that is very, 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 very important, right? Very, very important. As you develop upon Vipassana as well, upon Vipassana as well, there will come a time when people are speaking to you. If a person is rude to you, if you have children at home, they are going to be rude to you sometimes, or they're not going to listen to you. They're going to say or clap back or say stuff. If you're with someone's going to say something. But when you are listening to this, you might have already had experience of this sort. The mind naturally just breaks up the words, you know. The mind naturally breaks up the words in a way that you're not hurt or you're not disturbed by this, but you understand, or you understand this person and the words that this person is speaking to a deeper sense, where it is not just a word, but you understand it in a deeper sense where you understand that person's mind, right? It develops into a different level where you feel when this person is speaking to you. If it is from the left side, you feel the vibrations of the person speaking to you from all across the body, almost like these frequencies are hitting you almost, and the vibrations are sort of vibrating through the left ear into your whole face or body almost, right? Through your whole face into the body almost. Do you experience states where even when you sort of look at a person? I actually knew a lady who was she was such a wonderful lady. The whole family was such a Dhammic good family actually. And they ran a very successful pharmaceutical business. I'm saying that because to tell you that they were not people who were jobless. They were people who were successful. So they ran this successful pharmaceutical business, and they were all meditating, from the child to the parents to the grandparents. They were all meditating, and the woman, the head of the family, or the grandmother, or the grandmother, she used to practice. Although she was a grandmother, she was not that old. She was in her 50s. She practiced Attika Sanya. Attika Sanya is the contemplation. Attika Sanya is the contemplation of the skeleton meditation. So she practiced this, and she practiced it to a level with all of her other work. She was managing the the pharmaceutical business, all of that. And that she would sometimes, when her husband would be in bed, right, sleeping, right, she would see a skeleton, right? She would be able to see a skeleton, not the flesh, but just the skeleton, right? And this happens even when you sometimes look at your hand, you do not see the flesh, but you see the skeleton, and things in that way starts breaking down. So when you do experience these states, are states where again you've impinged on an object again and again and again and again. And through this Dhamma study, you might have already noticed differences and changes in your patterns of thinking throughout this time of study. The way that we think, the way that we sort of take on objects in through our five senses changes, right? And allow that change to go forward. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Allow these changes to take place, allow these changes to flourish, and accept them and see the reality within them. If it is real, you accept, right? Keep that in your mind. If it is real, I am not going to be afraid, right? So if you do see skeletons, if you do see the foulness or something, or if you see disintegration of mind and body, all of these factors. When you practice vipassana, sometimes there is a time where the whole body turns into a hill of sand. Like, for example, you would see now, if you've been in a place like Dubai or Qatar, when in a time of a sandstorm, with the sort of sand coming from afar like a wave of sand, sort of the body disappears in that way. And these are experiences. So tell yourself, if it is real, I am not going to be afraid. I'm not going to be surprised. I'm going to actually be excited to see what is real, and open yourself up to that level of consciousness. Because the only thing that is holding us back is the lack of this Dhamma foundation that we are focusing on at this moment. The only thing that is holding us back is this lack of Dhamma foundation that is holding us back, right? So when we do get this, we must allow it to sort of sink in into our hearts, our minds, in a way that we do accept it completely. Now, the dependent on fading away of lust, the fading away. Now, the word fading away is very peculiar here. The word fading away, what does it mean? Now, it seems to mean, or it means, rather, it not seems to mean, it means that the fading away or the dispassion, we are not focusing on the dispassion. We are not focusing on the dispassion, but the dispassion is something which happens, right? Now, just imagine you are on a diet, right? You are on a diet. We are all on a diet. Right? England, we are consistently on a diet. In the UK, right? So we are all on a diet, but um, but now if you're thinking about food all the time, right? If you're thinking about something which looks really good in your fridge and you're thinking about it, it gets hard for you, right? It gets harder for you because you want to have a taste of it, or it motivates you, or it's almost as if that cart is calling you. It's speaking to you, right? Likewise, when at this time of practice, I've used the example of a monkey jumping from one tree to another, lets go of one branch when it knows what other branch it is going to catch hold of, right? It let goes of one to catch hold of another. If we focus on letting go of something for the sake of letting go of something, it's not going to work. Letting go in terms of the practice, always remember, let go with another goal in mind. What is the other goal in mind? Nibbana, enlightenment, right? And enlightenment also, enlightenment by definition varies in our minds according to our practice, right? Whilst the beginner would just sort of blandly put in enlightenment, that is what I want, and catch hold of this concept of enlightenment that we have, the practitioner would hold on to enlightenment in a way comparing. Now you've meditating, you understand and experience where this meditation brings you peace. Through letting go of the breath, you experience the breath deeper. Through letting go of the sensations, you experience sensations to a deeper level. You understand in your mind, you've convinced yourself to a certain level through experience that through letting go, you are at calm, at ease, at bliss, right? That is a part where the person who is a practitioner would hold on to, right? In the light of enlightenment. In the light of enlightenment. So enlightenment, or else for a person who is a beginner, we might all, I have been, and I'm sure you all have been in this position as well. When we first started working towards the path of liberation, when we first started working towards enlightenment, we might have read about it, we might have heard about it in a sermon or a Dhamma lecture or something, and now you have a concept of what it is and you hold on to that. No, the practice of what enlightenment is, you see, or you feel, have a feel of it through your practice. You have a feel of it through your practice, that emptiness of mind and the peace and serenity that follows the meditation as you develop in a meditation. That comparatively, if at this stage I am experiencing something of this sort, what would I experience in my when I develop further? it is actually spoken of in the Maha-Sunyata Sutta, right? Maha-Sunyata Sutta, how do we, it is said, when you talk about shunya, emptiness, nothingness, right? Nothingness and emptiness are concepts that we have never experienced in our entire life. We have not, right? So how does one develop? Because in the practice of nibbana, when we cling on to nothingness, right? When we are working towards this state of nothingness, our mind does not have a concept of what it is, right? Even in the study of Abhidhamma, it is said that the enlightenment fact, or rather the states of enlightenment are gochara to a person, a mundane person. Agochara mean you cannot even comprehend. You cannot even comprehend the level of peace, that level of bliss, that level of compassion, right? Agochara is said. Why? Because our minds are not sort of ruled up or conditioned or molded or seasoned in that manner that supports that sort of understanding, right? So what does the Buddha, or what is the Buddha's advice in getting used to something that could even come closer to enlightenment? That is, for example, the example which is given in the commentaries is you see, for example, you see a person who has two children, right? A person who has two children, knowing the difficulty, knowing the challenge of raising two children, sees or is able to see the difficulty in raising 5 children or 10 children, right? You see a woman down the road who has 10 children, or a woman down the road who has 5 children, right? And being aware of the difficulty that you go through in raising or the challenges, not difficult, but rather challenges that you go through in raising your 2 kids, you feel a sense of freedom from the difficulty or challenge of raising 10 or 5 kids. In that way, because my life is empty of that suffering, my life is at a blissful state. There is bliss that comes through that, right? There is bliss that comes through that. So this is in way to sort of tell yourself or to motivate yourself in a way where your mind draws closer or grows a bond almost towards the state of emptiness, towards the state of shunyata. Then we have dependent upon the cessation of suffering and the lightening of letting go. The cessation of suffering and the lightening of letting go is brought by the practice again, in a way that because now as you keep on practicing, as you lay down the foundation for you to develop the practice more, what happens is you create more bonds towards the practice, and as you grow more fond of the practice, the attachment that you have towards all of these defilements and other things that holds you down, and even the causes of suffering or the roots of suffering, with the reduction of that, what happens is that you are then able to develop upon the path. Now, moving on to Dhamma Vichaya, right? Now, is Dhamma Vichaya. He cultivates the awakening factor, that is Dharma investigation, that is dependent upon solitude. Now, what is dependent upon solitude, right? Now, when we use the word solitude, the Buddha uh, uses the word viveka, right? Viveka. Kaya viveka brings about chitta viveka, right? Kaya viveka can be reached. Kaya viveka uh, would mean maintaining or having yourself disposed within an environment that is suitable for a practice, suitable for this sort of a practice, right? This sort of a practice. So, for example, what is mentioned within the Dhamma is with regards to Kaya Viveka is Aranyagatova, Rukkamulagatova, Sunyagaragatova. That is, Aranyagatova is a forest, Rukkamulagatova is a root of a tree, or Sunyagaragatova is a graveyard. It's a graveyard. Now, this does not specifically then mean that this is the only way that we can reach Kaya Viveka. It is expounded within the Patisambhida Magga about other different ways that we can reach Kaya Viveka. Of course, it mentions a couple of factors actually. One of the factors now which I would feel um, that is applicable to you is there is all about regarding Senasana, right? Now, for example, as we grow older, maintaining larger houses are sometimes very difficult. It is very challenging to maintain a large house as we grow older. So we sort of retire into smaller, more quaint houses so that we are able to maintain them. Likewise, with the practice, the Buddha, he expounds upon the importance of getting rid of things that causes one distress of mind, right? So distress of mind. So when one finds oneself in the practice or motivated towards a practice, one rather than creating things that creates more complication to oneself, one starts practicing, or one starts changing one's lifestyle in a way that one is now able to retire or sort of give up certain things in life and focus on the more important things. Focus on the more important things. Now, in Japan, something that they do with regards to the strawberries and watermelons and all of that. So if you've been to Japan, you also know how certain exclusive shops, how expensive their fruits are, right? Um, how expensive their fruits are. Something that they do is now they do not allow all of the fruits to ripen. They cut them off and they select the best sort of looking fruits, the best quality of fruits to ripen, right? So that what happens is the nutrition that the plant gets is or goes into that specific fruit, right? So likewise, with all the energy that is inside of you, with all the energy that you can muster, right? What is the practice here? It is also very much mentioned within the Patanjali of the Hindu practices, where you get rid of those practices which are wasting your time and energy, and you put your energy into things that you helps you progressively in what you want to achieve, right? That is what the Buddha says. Now, cultivating cultivates the awakening factor, that is mindfulness. He cultivates the awakening factor, that is Dhamma investigation, that is dependent upon solitude, dependent on the fading away of lust, dependent upon the cessation of suffering, and ripening of um, ripening of letting go, right? Ripening of letting go. Now, this Dhamma Vichaya, right? This Dhamma Vichaya Sambodhanga deals with the, we sometimes say the discerning of Dhamma, we sometimes use the word the discrimination of Dhamma, right? The discrimination of Dhamma or discerning of Dhamma. Now, this is specifically, now this is very important to what I've been talking about all of this time regarding the subsects. This is where you understand which groupings of Dhamma falls into, or what groupings of Dhamma you belong into that specific category, right? To understand the nature and the interaction of these different groupings of Dhamma, right? Of these different groupings of Dhamma. Now, some people believe actually, um, some people actually have a very nasty habit of believing in this, and this is really bad. They believe that sometimes only with your meditation that you are able to reach this Dhamma Vichaya. That is not true. That is not true. Why is it not true? Because also before I go into why it is not true, also some people now when you meditate, as you meditate, the internal banter that you have in your mind, we know it sort of calms down. It sometimes absolutely disappears, right? It absolutely disappears. With that disappearing of this internal dialogue that you have, one could also then later on this power of intuition arises, right? This power of intuition, right? But this power of intuition is a feel. It is very difficult to put into words. Now, for example, it is like a feel. Now when you go to I've spoken about my experiences in certain forests where I've spent time in, where with the vibrations, right, where you're sensitive to being able to observe and feel these vibrations, right? Now likewise there can also be now a wholesome voice appearing in your mind, which starts telling you, if you do not ignore it, this voice starts controlling you. Right now, I have seen this happening way too often. Today, also, I was scolding a lady for doing it. Right? Because sometimes people now the practice encourages one to become the master of oneself, and then again through the practice itself, you're becoming a slave to your mind again. Right? This power of intuition gives you a sense of what right decision to make. It doesn't tell you what decision to make. And when people go behind this, what happens is they develop another internal banter, which is more calm, it is more angelic, it is more wholesome. I agree. But this is again your hindrances speaking to you, right? This your hindrances speaking to you. So here, this Dhamma Vichaya comes with Dhamma knowledge. This has to be supported with what we are doing here, this Dhamma knowledge that we are gaining. And when you do, what happens is the Dhamma is much, much, much more clearer to you, right? Much more clearer to you. You know, when a person asks you a question, you know on which category and grouping that belongs in, right? Right now, when we go through these factors of enlightenment and all else, it can feel like a whole jumble, a whole mess. What is first? What is second? What is third? But with Dhamma Vichaya, this, when we use the word Dhamma Vichaya, which is a type of energizing, right? Dhamma Vichaya, Viriya, Piti, or investigation, energy, joy, or rapture. These are ways that we energize the mind. That we energize the mind. So can Dhamma Vichaya, so this Dhamma Vichaya is a way of deeper understanding and breaking down the phenomena that is available or that we have now learned through the Dhamma, right? Now one would ask, okay, Bante, is a person who is not a Buddhist, who is not a person who is not a Buddhist, who has not, even if that person is a Buddhist, if that person has not learned the Dhamma, can he not now attain Nibbana, right? Now, I can't, I will answer that question to you with the doctrine, right? When we come into stages such as Nama Rupa Paricheda Jnana, when we come into higher stages of Vipassana, right? We cannot, how are we on earth able to discern? Now, even if it was regarding the jhanas, how will you know how to go from one jhana to the next if you did not know the Dhamma? Right? You would probably spend years and years and years and years thinking of the jhana, and also thinking that you are enlightened because you do not know how to recognize the jhana factors, right? The discernment regarding Nama Rupa Paricheda Jnana and so forth and so on is all what we are doing within Abhidhamma these days, right? The study of Chitta, Chetasukha, and Rupa. Consciousness, the mental factors, and the materiality is the whole pack of knowledge that you need for Nama Rupa Paricheda Jnana, right? So you actually, a person will develop, but there will come a time when that person starts stumbling on the path, where that person will not know what to do, right? And we know now with the discussions that we have had during our meditations, we do come on to stumbling blocks where we notice that we do need a bit of help, that we do not understand what is going on, right? Now that is where now things like Dhamma Vichaya, that is where it comes. You understand the groupings, you understand the nature of this element. You are meditating, you have a voice in your mind, you understand what that voice is, where it is coming from, and you can fit it onto, or you will know what to do now, right? Because of this Dhamma Vichaya Sambojjhanga. Because of this Dhamma Vichaya Sambojjhanga. When a consciousness arises, now at this stage, when you develop it into that level, you will not be confused with the consciousness and the mental factor because of Dhamma Vichaya Sambojjhanga, right? Because of Dhamma Vichaya Sambojjhanga. So when we practice, again, we need to practice in a way that we find a complete balance of course, our Dhamma learning, our meditative practice, and also being a good person to society, to the family that you live in, and all of that as well. That balance. And Dhamma Vichaya Sambojjhanga is something that helps us discern the Dhamma in that fashion. Virya, right? Virya or effort is again then what we have already discussed regarding effort, right? PC, again, we have the understanding of what we have spoken of regarding the jhanas. We are going to come into the jhanas again later on in this sutra as well, right? And Pasaddi is the tranquility that we have again spoken of, that we have again spoken of. So these factors of the enlightenment factors, these are to say that these 7 factors is what you need in your life. It is what you need in your practice that will enable one to go deep into the practice, that will allow one or give one the strength to achieve enlightenment, to achieve enlightenment. Now we come down to the Noble Eightfold Path, right? The Noble Eightfold Path. The Noble Eightfold Path, we know, is the absolute core of Buddhism, right? Is the absolute core of Buddhism. What is Buddhism? Buddhism is the following of the Noble Eightfold Path. You know, that is one of the easier definitions that we can give, right? The whole practice is sort of elucidated within this Noble Eightfold Path. The Noble Eightfold Path can be practiced in 2 ways. The Lokiya Noble Eightfold Path and the Lokottara Noble Eightfold Path. The mundane and the supramundane practices concerning the Noble Eightfold Path. So one who is doing all of this for mental sanity, right? To have a good family, to lead a good life, follows the Lokiya or the mundane eightfold path. For one who is devoted towards the attainment of Nibbana, practices the supramundane Noble Eightfold Path. What is the difference between the Lokiya or the mundane and the supramundane Eightfold Noble Path? In the supramundane Eightfold Noble Path, there are 3 main factors of contemplation within all of the 8 factors of the Eightfold Path. What are those 3 factors? The 3 characteristics. What are the 3 characteristics? Anicca, Dukkha, Anatma. Impermanence, suffering, and non-self. Right? Now, this is where I tell you, this is how I tell you, if you fail in Sila, don't bother about it. Move forward. Don't be wailing and crying about it. Move forward. Right? Why? You see it here being said, there the Lokottara Eightfold Noble Path features or has its factors being impermanent suffering and non-self. The contemplation of impermanent suffering and non-self falls within the Sila aspects, the Virya aspects, the Spanya aspects, the Samadhi aspects, all of these things. I hope it is clearer to you now, right? I hope it is clearer to you now where this comes from. Even if with regards to, I've told you examples from Acham Brahm, inspiration, aspiration, aspiration, inspiration, aspiration, inspiration, aspiration, desperation, expiration. Remember those 4, right? Desperation and expiration. So those also come from this teaching where we know that these mental states up until we do reach an attainment of nibbana can be impermanent, right? Can be impermanent. These mental states are impermanent. We do not stick on to these things. The pleasures and the pains of meditation, we do not stick on to these things. The pains and pleasure of life, we do not stick on to these things. But we do allow ourselves, to absolutely enjoy it. You take the Buddha, for example, right? Let us evaluate the way the Buddha lived. The Buddha lived in a lodging made out of red sandalwood, the most expensive and the best available of the time, from the most organic of forests. Now, for example, if you take Sri Lanka, the best sandalwood is found within Singharaja, right? Within Singharaja, that is where you get the best sandalwood, right? You are not supposed to cut down these trees, right? You're not supposed to cut down these trees. I remember a fun fact now. I think your eyes will pop now when I tell you this. So, because in Na Uyana, or this forest monastery that I lived in Kurunagala, Venerable Nauni Aridhamma Thero's monastery, the largest forest monastery in Sri Lanka, we had 1,000-year-old ebony trees, right? So sometimes some of these trees, there was a large ebony tree that has fallen. Now these are trees that belong to, these forests belong to the heritage, right, and the forest conservation. So we are not supposed to remove the trees from the forest, right? So what do we do? Right, so sometimes these trees falls on kutis and lodgings and over the bridges and all of that, so we had to clear it. So what we do is, we when they fall, these large trunks of ebony, we cut them up and put them as firewood. We cut these large trees of ebony and we use them slowly as firewood. Oh my gosh. The first time I saw that, I was like, what? That is the most expensive fire I've seen. Right. So in that way, the I don't even know why I said that. So, anyways, moving on. Right. So, with regards to the Eightfold Noble Path, all of this, it's impermanent, and that is the part that makes it supramundane. Then, coming down to the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, the Noble Eightfold Path is a clear methodical practice. We move through the Noble Eightfold Path, and each and every part of this Noble Eightfold Path is supported by wisdom. It is wisdom, it forms the utmost base of the Noble Eightfold Path as well. The first factor, right view. Now, when we take right view, Samma Ditti we call it, right? Samma Ditti. What does Samma Ditti, according to the threefold division? Sila, Samadhi, Panya, that is the threefold division. Wisdom, Sila is morality, Samadhi is concentration, Panya is wisdom. The first, you find that it starts off with Panya, right? So this is where we form the base and foundation to our practice. But this right view is, I won't say useless, but it's quite weak if it is not supported by Samma Sankappa, or right thought, which is the second part of the Noble Eightfold Path, right? The Noble Eightfold Path. Now, what is right view? Right view is the law of karma, impermanence, right? The law of karma, impermanence, suffering, non-self, right? Rebirth and death, Patijjasamuppada, the dependent origination. All of these factors fall under what we found to be right view. So right now, as we go on through the elucidation of the path, what we are doing, or what I'm supporting you of doing, is developing your right view, Samma Ditti, right? Developing your right view. But the right view is quite weak if, right? If it does not trickle down, to the level of Samma Sankappa, to the level of Samma Sankappa. Now, level of Samma Sankappa, there are three types of thought, right? Right thought. Um, the intention of renunciation, nekkhamma sankappa, right? Intention of non-ill will, avihinsa sankappa and avyapada sankappa. The intention of non-ill will and the intention of non-cruelty. Nekkhamma sankappa, avihinsa sankappa, and avyapada sankappa. Right? These three types of sankappa. Now, when the Dhamma consistently pulls us in a certain direction. When the Dhamma pulls us in this direction, we are letting go of a way of life that we have been inhibiting for some amount of time. We find ourselves letting go of practices such as drinking alcohol. We find ourselves letting go of certain things that hinder our practice, that hinder our mental well-being. We start adopting things which are more wholesome. All of that, when we do all of that, that is fueled and supported by nekkhamma sankappa. By nekkhamma sankappa. Now, nekkhamma sankappa is also one's ability to let go of bad and adopt good as well, right? Letting go of bad, adopting good as well. And all of that is fueled through the right view that we have. The right view for us to be able to fuel the next processors comes through. Now, I've told you, read one sutta a day, but read two sutras a day. Your mind will, the way that the way that you cognize, the way that you operate will change. Now, this is where I got that from, and that is through personal practice as well. When you have right view, right, you have it working. When you read a sutta, you have it working through your mind. But when you have two sutra readings a day, what happens is you are thinking about it all the time throughout your day, right? Throughout your day. So now what you're fueling is, you have the right view. All right, we listen to a lot of Dhamma talk, we listen to a lot of Dhamma, we've heard a lot of Dhamma through the years, we read a lot of Dhamma as well. But for us to really taste the organic results of Dhamma, it should be within our thought processes. That thought process is then through now this commitment to intentional abhi, nekkhamma sankappa, which is the ability to let go of certain things, right? To let go basically, right? And then the rest is avihinsa sankappa. This is metta, loving kindness. Metta, loving kindness, right? Now you find that sometimes when we live a mundane life, sometimes we do get annoyed, we do get mad, hatred does arise, annoyance does arise. But remember that these significant parts, like Achan Chah says, if there is no problems in a monastery, that is a bad monastery, right? If there is no problems in a monastery, that is a bad monastery. And why is that? Because these problems that arise hints to you that you have to, that there is a part of mind that you have to take care of, that you have to tend to, that you have to get rid of in a way. These challenges that we do experience, these challenges that we do experience are challenges that must be gone through. Now, what are the challenges that monks of those days experienced? The challenge of hunger was one, right? The challenge of hunger was a problem. It was very difficult to find food sometimes, right? It was difficult to find food. People did not understand. People did not understand this practice of giving alms. All of this. Just imagine how difficult it would be if we were to go on alms, an unorganized alms in the UK, right? To sort of households, right? So food was a problem. The shelter was a problem, right? Shelter was a problem. What kind of problem? There were forest had animals. The dark brought out animals that they did not see during the day. There were real dangers. There were real dangers. And in certain parts of Sri Lanka, certain parts of Burma, certain parts of Thailand, and even Laos, not Laos, I'm sorry, not Laos, but certain parts of these three countries, there are still open dwellings open dwellings that monks live in, right? Now, Venerable Achan Surapanyo, who is a son, of Krishna, this Malaysian Sri Lankan Tamil gentleman, who is now an ordained senior monk. He lives in a monastery that is closer to the Thai border, and they, a lot of them, their monastery is a very simple monastery. Might be developed now, might be might be developed now, but they live very much out in nature, and they maintain those simple Raja Krishna Raja Krishna maintains very simple dwellings. And there was also, I think, a couple of years ago, I read that a tiger had attacked a monk and he died. Balangoda areas in Sri Lanka still have three-walled kutis or three-walled bungalows, not bungalows, but rather dwellings. It is only one. You only have a roof, a cement roof, and you have three walls opening up into nature, right? And you still have dangers of where animals do come in, snakes come in, bears, all of this as well. So what this does is you are forced to develop your mind, right? You are forced to develop your mind. I think I've told you of an example where a monk, during the time of the LTTE, or the Tamil Tiger clashes, during the Tamil Tiger clashes in Sri Lanka, there was this monk from Australia. He was a Sri Lankan monk who was living in a beautiful monastery in Australia, which was offered to. It was not offered to him, but he was living there. He was living alone in a sort of converted container. And he during the time of the Tamil Tigers, he walked up to the northern area and he took residence in one of the abandoned houses, because the war was still going on, and this was towards Kilinochchi, right? Kilinochchi, that area where the war was still going on, and he could, from a certain amount of miles away, because the towns and cities were all empty, it was only the military which was going in up north further. He walked into this area and he started meditating, and there were still bombs being dropped. He was very well aware of all the sounds and all of these things. So the fear of death, that was what he was trying to conquer. So with this fear of death, what he says was, now this is something that he told me, his mind reached a state of samadhi, concentration, far beyond any experience of concentration that he has had before, because with the fear of death and with the propensity, the potential of him actually dying through the night, he gave in, or he put in such amount of effort to the meditation. The first thing is, now the meditation he was doing throughout, he was a very senior meditating monk. He's been doing his meditation for years. But the thing which really helped him at this moment is he dropped everything. Why? I might die tonight, right? I might die tonight. So he dropped everything in his mind, nothing about, he was not concerned, is the dana coming tomorrow? Where am I getting my food tomorrow? What am I going to do when I get back to Australia? How am I going to get back to Colombo? He was not thinking about anything. He absolutely dropped everything, which allowed his mind to flourish into that deep state of mindfulness awareness, right? And he is so moved by that practice, by the practice that he experienced during that time. So even for you, when you practice, train yourself to absolutely drop everything. It might be difficult, of course, because we are not forced into such states of mind. But even in telling yourself, sometimes when you tell yourself, I want to achieve Nibbana in this session, right? Even that, anytime that you say it, if you even try saying it now, there is some sort of feeling around your chest, right? There is some sort of feeling around your chest, and that is fear, right? Train your mind to do it, right? And that will give you a kickstart in your practice. Right? A kickstart in your practice. Now, we will end the session here for now at Samma Sankappa. We will go into Samma Sankappa more. right? We will go into Samma Sankappa a little bit more deeper in the next class, and also Samma Ditti, but we will leave the class for now. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask? Now, Samantha has a question for us. How do you know what is the right amount of effort to exert? How do you know what is the right amount of effort? It is the right amount of effort is a balance that you find parallel to the samadhi that you have, right? Parallel to the samadhi that you have. With regards to now, when we meditate, we've spoken of finding balance, right? That balance you find. So some days you're sleepy, some days you're awake, and your mind is restless, and then we slowly move into a balance, isn't it? Where we are able to reach a balanced state where our minds are peaceful, where our minds are able to maintain itself on object, like that, Samantha. Like that, you find the right amount of balance through your practice, right? Through you find the right amount of effort through your practice, and the effort should also reflect the life that you're living. Now, for example, a layperson, if a layperson is trying to reach the level of a monk who is living and practicing in a meditation center or monastery, that would bring about a great amount of difficulty, because life with work and all of these things, you are setting yourself up for failure, right? Your practice, because remember, this flourishing of practice also has an attribute of has an attribute of happiness. You must, this pasadi, this zest, piti pasadi that we've gone through, right? In the last section, we went through the awakening factors. We went through zest, tranquility, and pasadi, or uh, pasadi is tranquility, right? Tranquility, effort, piti, zest, and tranquility. Now, zest and tranquility. Now, one of the reasons that in my meditations I do that relaxation meditation first, it is a way of giving you pleasure. It is a way of giving you tranquility. It is a way of giving you that sense and peace of mind for the mind to devote itself to the next practice to come, right? So within your practice, you must find a place where there is happiness in your practice, where you are happy to let go, right? Where you are actually happy to let go. You feel lighter when you do let go, right? You must find that within your practice. You must find that within your practice, and that tells you, with that sense of the attribute of happiness and zest all supporting this, you find that balance where it reaches a parallel where it's stable to your life you live, the situations that you live, as well as the practice that you have for oneself, right? As a layperson, if you try to protect the 10 precepts, you're setting yourself up for disaster. Every day you're going to feel as if an absolute failure. Why? Because how can you wait without not touching money when you're working and doing all of these things, right? You're setting yourself up for failure, right? You're setting yourself up for failure. So what are you doing? Of course, during Uposatha days where we are at the temple, or where during the full moon days where we take up the 10 precepts and all of these things, we can do it, because that environment is there. But if the environment is not there, and if you're feeling bad after your practice, what happens? You need to start at a position or place, or you need to maintain yourself, because this happiness that we gain from the practice has a very pivotal role that it plays in helping us move forward. This is not a war with the mind, right? This is not a war with the mind. If it is something, it is absolutely a process of convincing at first, right? It is a process of convincing at first. So that balance, Samantha, that comes through your practice, right? That comes through your practice, and we are going to actually go through these balances later on through the subjects that we are going to discuss later on as well.
Thank you, Bhante. That's excellent. Thank you.
Dil.
Can you hear me, Bante?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. First, just to tell you, thank you so much for stressing the happiness factor, Bante, because those days when I was doing long retreats, I was so keen on sitting, doing, however uncomfortable, keeping to the strict right throughout the day for sometimes 10 days, 14 days, doing sitting, that it was more about trying to achieve what we had been asked rather than the happiness. It took
Yeah.
me much longer to realize that
Yeah.
after all we say the peace and bliss of Nibbana. So there's happiness in it. And if your practicing is making you unhappy, it doesn't make you progress.
Yeah.
But I think ever
Absolutely.
since I met you, Bante, you've always told that. So I want to thank you. The other little thing that I wanted to ask, I'm sure there's a simple explanation that you can tell me. When we do the fine materials, we getting the jhanas. Now
Mhm.
we say we go up to, we say Vitakara, and then we say Piti Sukha. So there is zest and happiness. But here it's always Piti and then Pasad, the tranquility. Is there any reason for that?
Well,
That
the reason for that specific part is
yeah,
not tranquility. The sense of tranquility is a little bit different from the PT aspect of it. The
right.
tranquility is a more calmer, finer, more refined state of awareness. And also, if you do remember, the sutra regarding the dissolution of dependent origination, do you remember that? How the dependent origination breaks up? That breaking up of the dependent origination starts with passaddhi, right? It starts with passaddhi because that is now, for example, we know, we say, we go jati jara marana soka parideva dukkha domana supayasa sambhavanti,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
then we go from that part up, right? The dissolution,
right.
right?
Yes,
That
yes.
part where we go from the from the arising to the
Adam.
dissolution,
Yeah,
right,
yeah, yeah.
starts with this tranquility passaddhi. Now passaddhi is a feel where you are within the practice, you are stable within the practice, right? Just imagine sitting comfortably on a lounge chair, having no sort of insecurity whatsoever. The temperature is perfect and you're absolutely comfortable. You have no needs, cravings. You're not craving for anything more as well. And you're just lounging on your lounge chair. The temperature is right, everything. Pasadi is a feel like that. Where zest is more of the example. If we remember regarding zest, what we use in a desert, you see an oasis of water.
Oh,
And the zest is when, as you walk with thirst and you see this oasis, this happiness, or this happiness that arises in terms of, oh my gosh, it's right, like seeing the light at the end of a long tunnel, right? That, just imagine. I think you can sort of bring it into the practice where you see samadhi in your meditation and you're like, wow, right? Passaddhi is more of your lounging, your relax. You know the practice. You're with the practice. You understand what I mean, right?
right.
That is more of the passaddhi feel, right? And why the dependent origination starts with passaddhi? Passaddhi is a state of where you are firm with the practice, you're happy with the practice, you're enjoying the practice in a very wholesome manner, not enjoying the practice in an unwholesome or in a childish manner, but in a way that you're confident. Yeah.
So then the difference between that and the Sukha, Piti Sukha of the other one, which
Sukha
is
relates to Sukha relates to a bodily pleasure, right? Sukha more relates to this pleasure that comes through that part of this happiness that comes through a material sort of object, right? Whereas zest is a furthermore a bit more mental born. Pasad is a state of complete security, right?
okay.
In terms of happiness,
Right. So you
right?
say that
That is
the
where
peak,
then we start the process of breaking down the uh, the factors of dependent origination, where our mind is stable enough to now start breaking down. That is why passaddhi you would see all towards the end,
And
right?
so piti then is it's where you see the mirage, and that's more mental. Sukha is when you actually drink the water and it's more bodily. But here the passaddhi is more the dissolution, because as you start breaking down the
Yes,
factors and well.
yes,
But
yes.
that's also a mental thing, is it? Is that a mental thing or the bodily thing?
It is mental.
Mental.
It is,
Thank you very much, Bhante.
but this mental thing will pervade into the body as well. But it is very much a mental thing.
Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah? All right. Yeah. Devika, do you have anything to say?
No, this is the first time, Bhante,
Devika,
that
you're
I'm
my neighbor, isn't
participating.
it?
Huh?
You're my neighbor, isn't it?
No, I
No?
live in Virginia,
Oh, you're
Fairfax,
in Virginia.
Virginia, from USA.
Okay, I thought you're my neighbor down Ward Place. Okay.
No. This is the first time I'm participating.
All right.
I have a friend who is already Hema Mali,
Oh,
who
okay.
lives in London. So she only told me about this session,
Did
and
you
I
enjoy
was,
the session, Devika?
yes, very much, because
Good.
I have done Abhidhamma in Sri Lanka long
Okay.
years back.
Okay.
So this is like a real refreshing experience
Okay.
going through all this. So,
All right. Lovely,
so
Devika. We'll see you in classes to come also then. Do you have a
yes, of
question for
course.
us?
No
No.
questions right
All right.
now.
Huh?
So ඔබ වහන්සේට නිදුක් නිරෝගී භාවය ලැබේවා.
Thank you, Devika.
බොහොම ලස්සනට explain කරා. බුදු සරණයි. That's all I can say.
All right, Devika. Thank you
Yes,
very
so
much.
I will be participating from now on.
Good. So, does anyone else have a question? That explainer really helped? Yes, that has. Okay. So, if we are done for today, we will wrap up the session. I will see you all tomorrow, and take care and have a great rest of the evening.